Hey everyone, you're listening to Hocked Unloaded with writer-director Steve Drake and producer Rachel Franz. This is the podcast where we tell you about how we made our first feature film, Hocked. Each week, we'll bring on a new guest and they'll share their experience of what it was like making this film. In this episode of the podcast, we dive into what had to happen before production even started, some of the backstory of how Hocked came to be, and as well as some of the bumps along the way. We hope you enjoy it.
Sounds so good. So satisfying. It's like it was brewed in the Rockies just for me.
My banquet is just so encouraging. A hard day's work deserves a beer.
Yeah, it does. Let's talk Hocked.
Let's talk Hocked. Apparently, Steve is too emotional to introduce himself.
I'm emotionally drained.
Steve Drake is the writer, director, and one of the starring actors of the feature film Hocked.
Rachel Franz did the makeup
Oh my god.
and was the red tape cutter.
I can handle mine.
Body double for Beer Can Rob.
How dare you?
What else did you do?
You were the body double for Beer Can Rob, not me.
I know.
Anyway, I'm Rachel Franz. My loose title for this is producer, but as Steve mentioned, I've done quite a few different things. I did the makeup and some effects for wounds, I would say. Practical effects, not digital.
Yeah, I was trying to think of a good title for that because it's not necessarily that you just did makeup. Like you did makeup and gore effects is kind of what I wanted to call it, but I didn't know if that was a real title. But most of the time, it seems like you can make up your own title for filmmaking. So that's what I would call you.
Awesome.
Makeup and practical gore effects, as well as an associate producer.
Camera operator. If Steve's on screen,
Oh, God.
I'm behind the camera.
Well, I think we'll just cut it off there. So I was trying to think about all these silly titles, and it's like it'd be stupid to include them all. We just look like a bunch of idiots.
That's why my loose title is producer.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. My loose title is a film by.
Well.
And unfortunately, I had to be Steve Dirks. I'm nothing like Steve Dirks. Steve Dirks is a pussy.
Steve, tell us what Hocked is about.
I hate this question.
I can answer it if you want.
You know how many times I've tried to figure out what Hocked is about? I can't even tell you. Most people make movies, and they're about a person, a protagonist and an antagonist, and there's some sort of conflict, and they learn something, right? Yeah, we don't really have that, and their conflict and their storyline is very well thought out. You can easily sum it up into one sentence, but I think our main character changed throughout the filming of the movie, and then he died throughout the filming of the movie. So I don't even know how to explain this thing anymore, because it used to be, it was a story of two pawnbrokers in their quest to save a failing small town pawn shop, and then Rich Ledoux came in and wrecked our plan by having an excellent performance, because then it became pretty much Laney Green's story. How do I say that in one line? I don't know.
Hocked is a story about 3 different sets of people, I would say. You've got the pawnbrokers, the goons, and our favorite struggling addict musician.
Mm-hmm.
And this struggling addict musician gets his hands on some shit he's not supposed to have, and just stashes it away at the pawn shop, and gets these 2 innocent pawnbrokers stuck in the middle of some chaos that comes crashing down on their shop. It's funny. It's fucked up. It's a good time.
So, a little backstory on Hocked and my family, who is basically everyone in Hocked. And everyone in Hocked that wasn't my family, I now consider my family. Let's go back to 1981. A young whippersnapper by the name of Gary Reed purchases the only pawn shop in Bozeman, Montana. That's my grandfather. And creates an empire that spread across 3 different towns in the Gallatin Valley and beyond. So our family, they're all sorts of pawnbrokers. Dirty, greasy people.
That's not true.
Those pawnbrokers. Dirty people. They're only there to rip you off.
That's not true at all. They're good, innocent people.
Well, some of them are.
Just trying to make a buck.
Mm-hmm. So I worked at a pawn shop. So did Rachel.
I did.
For probably, I think, 3 years, something like that. I got into it because my mom and stepdad had bought the pawn shop, one location from my grandpa. Needed some help, so I was in there for a little while. And I basically grew up in the pawn shop. It was just a way of life. And it's funny because not a lot of people have this mentality, this pawn shop mentality that I grew up with, where like everything you have to, like, I feel like I was born with this innate ability to argue with people.
Absolutely. If anybody knows Steve, it's that he loves to argue.
I think it's from the pawn shop. It's weird. But anyway, worked there for a couple years, and throughout the time at the pawn shop, I would always write down these little anecdotes, the weird stuff that would happen. And I'm telling you, from day one, or at least the first week, there was some weird stuff that I had seen. And the people, and I'm not saying everybody, most people were just normal people. And yeah, they're just cool people who needed some extra money. And you can't go to a bank and get $100, so you go to the pawn shop. And most days, yeah, super just ordinary. But some days, there are some people and things that come in that you just would not believe. So I was writing down a lot of these things, and I kept track of them just because I was always big into video, and I wanted to do a short YouTube series, kind of like Drunk History. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, Drunk History is a pretty big production now, but I believe
Is it?
it started. Oh yeah, it's on Hulu, and huge actors take part in Drunk History now.
See,
but
I'm out of the
it
loop.
did start as a small production, similar to Letterkenny. I think is another good example.
I thought Drunk History was on Comedy Central. Is that right? No.
Yeah. Comedy Central is the production company, I think, now.
Oh, okay.
But you can watch it on Hulu. That's not a plug. They're not a sponsor.
Not yet.
Hopefully.
Oh yeah, that was kind of the idea. We were gonna, for instance, my second week working at the pawn shop, I was being trained by this guy named James. Shout out.
Hi, James.
To James. I hope you're listening. Hope you went to the premiere too. And this woman comes in, and she was of the trashy variety, I would say. And she pawns this, she had a bag of stuff. It was like one of those little tote bags, those cheap ones that you look at.
The string bags you get at like every concert festival.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about. She lays it down, and there's stuff in the bag. And James goes and he grabs this video camera that's in the bag. And he's like looking at it, and I didn't really pick up on what was going down because they were talking, and I was just trying to learn how to run the computer, basically. But he sets it down rather quickly and just says, he offers her an amount of money. She takes it. And he hands me this, he like prints the ticket, and he's like, okay. He gives me the sticker, and he says, okay, wrap this up and put it in the back. And that's just what you do. And I'm grabbing this this camera, and I'm like, it's got water on it. It's wet. What's up with that? And so I didn't think anything of it. And I put it back in the bag, and I start wiping this water off on my pants. I'm like, oh, this isn't water. This is like
too thick.
This is like greasy. Why isn't it going away? Why is it staining my pants? And James looks at me kind of with this like smile, but he was upset. He's kind of a germaphobe. There was lube of the sexual kind on said video camera, and so this nice lady had come in. We didn't preview the tape that was on there.
You should have.
should have, could have, maybe made some money. I don't know. But long story short, you can guess what was on that camera. And that was pretty commonplace as far as like finding despicable things on video cameras and SD cards. I don't know if you ever ran into any of that.
I never really checked SD cards. I was pretty much of the type that I wiped it and didn't look. There was I think maybe one time I looked on an SD card and it seemed somewhat suspect and criminal, but nothing sexual. So that was more than okay with me. But people did forget quite a bit what was in whatever the item was that they were pawning. I think Steve and I, we were working together the time that the Harley Davidson bags came in. Do you remember what was in those?
Underwear.
Yeah,
Lots of underwear.
Some biker dude left his old lady's chonies.
Or they were his.
We don't judge.
He was much too large to be wearing pink and neon green underwear. But to each their own. Yeah. No, we would see SD cards that had, I saw one from a GoPro where the dude was swimming with sharks.
That's bitchin'.
That was pretty cool. But then the next video that was on the GoPro was what I would only assume were the kids that stole the GoPro and then filmed themselves just taking huge rips off of a bong and skateboarding at the park. So yeah, they definitely stole that. That was unfortunate. But we should say that all these items were either sold to us or they were pawned and then defaulted on, which then makes them property of the
pawn shop. So we're not like snooping through people's private shit.
That would be gross.
It became property of the shop, and then that made it part of our job to snoop. Because we had to make sure it was sellable, and we had to make sure that we weren't going to sell a lube camera to a little old lady wanting to film her grandkids' 8th grade graduation.
Yeah, don't swap those videos. That's a bad one.
No.
Well, there's lots of weird things that come in the pawn shop, and that was where it was nice that I had worked at the pawn shop, and that my mother had worked there since she was itty bitty. The last image that you see before the credits roll, or before our wrap-up scenes with the characters, is a shot of my grandpa and my mom. I don't exactly know what year it is, but I would guess it's got to be
your mom was born in the
80s.
70s, so
yeah, I couldn't tell you how old she is in that photo, but my grandpa had a beard. He didn't have a beard. No, he had a beard in the 80s. I guess it doesn't matter. But the pawn shop's been a big, big, big part of our life in the family. I mean, all my uncles basically met all my aunts by working in the pawn shop because my grandfather had 3 daughters. All my aunts, yeah, every single one of their husbands was an employer at one point, and ex-husband.
the pawn shop just breeds love, I guess.
I guess so. Just breeds it, yeah.
Weird.
And that's why there's lube cameras.
Very sexy.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, when I was, everything kind of started for this whole crazy project, wanting to write something. I've always wanted to write something. We run a video production company. We've run it for quite a few years now, and it's pretty much all business, wouldn't you say?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I would say that the whole production company started probably because of the pawn shop as well. I think our first camera came from the pawn shop.
Oh, well.
The Canon?
The Canon came from a classified ad. But, yeah, the Panasonic came from the pawn shop. I mean, half the stuff in here came from a pawn shop. But my first paid gig came through the pawn shop. A guy, Rachel's favorite musician, came through the pawn shop.
I'm not a fan. If I ever see him, I'll have choice words, but we won't name drop him.
No way. He would come in, and he was a hip-hop artist.
In Bozeman, Montana.
Bozeman. Hey, you can do it. And he would pawn a lot of his musical equipment every month, and then if he had a show, he would get it out. And he saw one of my business cards that was for a different company, that Stupid Bullshit Productions. That was a fun thing. And somehow he saw that card and said, I need this guy to make my music video. And so that's how I started. I didn't know people would pay me for anything. And I didn't get paid. I got paid.
We got paid in beer.
Yeah. That was the first thing I ever got paid in, was a 20 rack.
30 rack.
30 rack.
Coors Light.
Coors Light, which we don't drink that swill anymore. We've upgraded.
To the banquet beer.
This is just me telling my whole fucking life story, isn't it?
I like it though.
I
think it's good background. So you guys heard how the whole storyline kind of got inspired. Just Steve growing up in the pawn shop. I worked in the shop for a while. His whole family has been pawn shop people.
It's the only thing I know. It's the only thing I knew well enough to make a script on.
Perfect. Unfortunately, that family shop closed down not too long ago. And we were here at the office at Single Six Media when Steve's stepdad came in to tell us some unfortunate news that the shop would be closing. So, Steve, what happened? Like, what was the first thing through your head when Dave told you the shop was going to be shutting down? And how long had you been working on this script at this point?
Oh boy. What did I think? Well, initially I was kind of like, but I was only like 7 pages deep on this story of Hocked. And because I started writing Hocked as a full-on screenplay and not just a web series, because I tried to write a different script on some other stuff. I couldn't even get past like page 2. So I was like, this is stupid. But I had 3 scripts kind of laid out, like, okay, these are my 3 first ideas. Maybe I'll write them, as I felt like I wanted to. And the second script, which is now Hocked, really it just like took off because I just had so much good inspiration to draw from real characters that I had known from the pawn shop and real strange happenings from the pawn shop. And I knew that I had access to this pawn shop. My family owned the pawn shop, and they would never go out of business. So I'll be able to leisurely write this script, make it really cool, and then we'll film in there, and that'd be awesome. But then, like you said, Dave comes in and he's telling us that he wants to close the pawn shop, and it's just one location, but we wanted to film in that location because it's the oldest and it's the
one we both worked in.
Yeah, it's retro. It's the first one. It hasn't really, I think the carpet's only been updated once since 1981.
I'm pretty sure they just laid it over top the old one.
They did. We ripped it out. And the asbestos is still on the ceiling. Like, I got, just good stuff in that building. And it reflected the vibe of the script, I think, nicely. Because it's just a gritty movie that has no morals. Well, Dave just kept talking, and I was like, I just need to tell him about my script. And so I was like, Dave, dude, I started writing the script. It's based in the pawn shop. Like, can you not close this thing? It would be really cool. And he's like, no, we're closing it. I was like, okay. And this, let's see, December 20-something, 21st? I think it's right. So December 21st, 2018, Dave comes in and says, nope, no more pawn shop. But we kind of talked it over, and he thought it would be plausible if I could write the script in time, he could give us 2 months in the pawn shop. He would lock the doors and not touch anything in the front.
We'd get to keep all
We'd get to keep everything the same.
Inventory as prop and set pieces.
Yes. And with the idea that, the end of what month was it? End of February then. Was it February or was it March?
For
just being done. I feel like
we were supposed to be done at the end of February.
That was the original.
Our original deadline was the end of February. We had to be out.
So he's like February 29th or whatever it is. 28th. He's like, we're gonna boot scoot out of that place that night. You need to help, but for the rest of that, we'll let you film in there. And I was like, deal. And so for the rest of December, it was like, okay, let's write this thing, and it was a lot of just like vomiting brain knowledge all over my computer and then picking out the good pieces. And I bought a couple books that helped with screenwriting practices that helped me get through some goofy writer's block. And I will say I was surprised at how quickly it hit the 90-page mark, which is what I was shooting for. Because that, the rule of thumb is every page should play out to a minute in your movie, give or take. And it ended up being like 120 pages, which is cool. But yeah, I was surprised how quickly that all came together nicely. So the writing itself wasn't all that all that difficult. It came very naturally. The next part was probably the hardest in the trying to find anyone and everyone that would play. I think we have 7 like heavy characters
Yeah.
that have a lot of lines.
Oh, yeah.
We didn't know any actors at all.
No.
All right,
Except your sister.
Yeah, you start talking.
So, like Steve said, we had 7 major roles that we needed to film. And the only person we really knew that had any acting experience was Steve's sister, Jalen, who directs a lot of different plays and shows at a local theater out here in Bozeman. So we, of course, asked Jalen to kind of come in and help us and be part of the casting call. And we set out this casting call, and no one came. I think 2 people that weren't like family or friends came.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them, after being offered a role, turned it down because the film didn't agree with her moral compass, which is fine.
Well, apparently that's a bigger deal than we thought originally.
Yeah. We don't have a moral compass here. We just want to make cool movies.
Don't do drugs.
Yeah.
That's the moral of our story.
That's the moral of our story.
And family. Family matters.
Yeah. I could say you could draw that
Those
conclusion.
are 2
from
great
Hocked.
morals.
But it didn't have a big enough moral for her to sign on for it, which is fine.
And
the other person,
she didn't want to swear.
She did not.
She's like, I'm not swearing.
She's way too nice. Very nice lady.
Have you seen our movie? Like, Jesus.
She didn't read the full script, that's for sure. But the other person got a minor role. There were a couple like really small minor roles just as extras. So here we are with this script that Steve had to bust out day by day.
The second girl came in and said, hey, I heard you need a stripper pole. I have one. And we're like, you're hired as the stripper.
Yep.
That was the second
I don't think
person.
she even really meant to be in the movie.
No, she's just like,
just
well, I
like,
got a stripper pole if you need it. And it's pink.
Yeah.
Like,
So we're like, well, cool.
We need you to be the stripper.
Yeah. Thanks, Selena.
Mm-hmm.
But
awesome.
So then it just came to calling on all of our family and friends to try and see what they could do. And surprisingly enough, we've got some pretty talented family and friends out here.
Mm-hmm.
And it gets to the role of Steve. Steve named the character Steve. So Steve Dirks is the character
I didn't
of
have
a
enough
pawnbroker.
Yeah, I didn't have enough time to change his name. I hate that. That's a big regret for me. What a stupid thing I did.
It makes for confusing podcast content. But
yeah, because everybody's like, oh, that must have been you. Did you really get robbed? Are you really such a bitch? Like, I try not to think I'm not.
Only sometimes. So, pawnbroker Steve, we don't have anybody to play this character.
Whoa.
And so Steve ends up having to play Steve Dirks, the pawnbroker, in Hocked. So, luckily, he's got all this experience in the pawn shop. So he just tapped into the grumpier side of a pawnbroker that he's been in his life. And
it was hard to tap into that grumpy side of Steve.
No,
I don't know where
that's not true at all.
I found the courage to find that part of myself.
He's a grumpy guy as it is, so he didn't have to make too much of a reach. But, so he ends up being the writer, the director, and now one of the main actors that had quite a bit of lines. So it definitely made for some challenging days, and that's probably part of why all of us that have been a part of this have 15 different technical, roles or what our jobs were, and that's why we're just going to get rid of titles.
Well, we should, because, there was a day where, Kevin was just moving lights for us. Or Andrew was holding up a giant piece of cardboard just to block the sun.
Yeah.
Or, pretty much anyone who walked in, we're just like, hey, can you hold something? Can you move lights? Do something.
Yes. So he had quite the job, quite the task ahead of him. So we talked about the difficulties of writing the film. Let's go to directing the film. What were some of the challenges that you had to face directing the film that you wrote and were in?
Well, I learned a lot. Luckily, let's count them off. How many people acted in our movie that had worked in a pawn shop? We've got myself, you.
Well, I didn't really act in it.
You only play 2 characters, Rachel.
I don't have any real lines.
Yeah, whatever. Yes, you do. You were the dispatcher with lines. How dare you?
I had a line.
Yeah, you did. So there's two of us. Josh, playing Booger, didn't ever work in the pawn shop, but I mean, he's my brother and he grew up in the pawn shop as well.
Yes.
Both Greg and Kimberly, my other brother and sister, they were PAs on the gig.
They also had some minor roles.
And I guess they did have minor roles. They born, raised in a pawn shop. Theron, who was the robber who robbed his own pawn shop, because that was at a different pawn shop. He's worked there. Chris and Dave, who are both the goons, Curtis and Clay, they both worked at the pawn shop. Matt, who played Cowboy, is my uncle. He worked at the pawn shop. I feel like I'm missing somebody. My mom, she played a very small role, but she was there the whole time, being my mom, being a nice lady. And Jalen's my sister. She
grew up in the shop.
That was nice. That we all kind of knew the vibe of this pawn shop story. Not saying that the pawn shop's dirty or there were detectives, that were dirty that were coming in here and trying to steal the stuff by putting warrants on. I did get hassled by a detective who was a complete dickhead once.
We'll hold on to that for a minute.
Yeah, that's fine. So it's all rooted in reality, But that was nice that people instantly were very invested in the film because they were excited, I think, to be a part of this film project. I think you would agree with that. I mean, from the first table reading, it really seemed like from that moment on, some people grabbed it and just didn't let go. They're just like, this is cool. Let's do this. And that was really cool to see.
Thank God.
Yeah, no, thank goodness that someone was excited about it. Because Lord knows I wasn't. But I think some of the other hard things in the beginning of the filming, we didn't, we were going through the motions and we didn't know exactly how we wanted to film each scene because we didn't really have limited resources. We have quite a few resources as far as cameras go, just because we have a production company, but we didn't know the best way to go about recording everything. Like at first, I think we had a bunch of different microphones and we were like filming multiple angles and it was just too much. It was bad shit. And we started filming everything on a tripod, which is just...
Don't do that.
Well, it had this weird stale feel to it. And I don't know why it felt so stale to me when there are so many tripod shots in good movies, in all of film and television. But for some reason, the tripod shot in Hocked just looked off. So we said, we're not touching the tripod for the rest of the project unless we really have to. So
that made my life a little difficult, but I'll get to that later.
Yeah, it was weird. That was such an odd thing, but it happened, and I'm happy that everything was shot off the tripod. But like I'm saying, in the very beginning, it seemed like we were really finding our way, and it took a while to really pick up steam in a lot of different ways. Like, sometime in the beginning, it seemed like people, maybe they were a little bit nervous.
Apprehensive.
Yeah, they didn't know. I don't want to, I'm just going to call myself out. In the very beginning, it was like, even though my name's Steve Drake, I am Steve Drake, and Steve Dirks is based off of a part of me who worked at the pawn shop, it was hard to become this other dude who just was kind of like, well, I hate everything.
Yeah, Steve's not a full-blown party pooper in real life.
I hate my job. Why does my grandpa, my thumb dad hate me? So, and especially, it's hard to just act in front of a camera and become this other person, even though, and I had the easiest job because I was basically just a shade off of this D-bag. And
he did not have the easiest job.
I think so.
Maybe on the acting side.
Absolutely, by far. Unless you're an extra, I don't know, you had to eat ice cream at the end. You're like, but getting people to really fully commit the day of there was a lot of people in the beginning of the production too. When we first started, everyone was really excited.
Jazzed.
Yeah, and everyone wanted to be there. The first day we had so many people cracking through. We filmed, the first thing we filmed was at the pawn shop, and it was the scenes that you see in the very beginning where it's like rapid fire. And there's the snake lady and the dumb hunter and the kid and everybody else. That was the first thing we did. And it was just kind of like a party. It's like day one, there was donuts and orange juice. Mm-hmm. Someone brought me a breakfast sandwich. And everyone was jazzed. And we're making a movie. And it was just so crazy that that's how it started, and everyone was having a good time. And luckily, that was a comedic scene, and so it aided the fact that there were people laughing, and in between takes, it stayed light. But then, like day 2, I don't even remember what it was, but I can tell you it was a lot different. Because people, if they were there, they're kind of hanging out, and they're kind of like, oh, well, I don't know what to do. And then, like, we have all these onlookers that weren't really involved. And, like, somebody at some point brought their girlfriend, and we're just like, they just sat there all day, and it was a little weird.
Yeah, our filming days often took place on weekends because everybody that did this was normal people. They had nine to fives. They had real lives outside of this production. So our filming schedule was bending over backwards. Sometimes we were filming at 8 o'clock at night, and it was supposed to be a scene that was taking place in the morning at the Pawnshop. So, and then a lot of weekends. So if we got an opportunity to film with somebody, let's say we had just one character, we had to film as many scenes that character is in as we could. So a lot of the times on weekends, it were 12 to 14-hour days.
Mm-hmm. Well, like Chris, he didn't live here. He'd come down, and we shot everything, all of Clay's shots in 2 days because he was only there for 2 days. Yep. So stuff like that's pretty cool that it actually happened.
But it makes it hard for people that are not involved. They're really just there all day.
Yeah, and they're there and they're looking on, and in the beginning it's fun and it's happy. But then when there's a scene where, we're trying to go for, there's like, for instance, a detective, he's walking through the pawn shop and there's a dead guy on the floor and he's all intense and he's going to murder the first guy that walks out of the back of the pawn shop. He's ready to like go like screaming war, like Banshee, right? Mm-hmm. But then there's a bunch of people and they're like laughing. That really like that, dude, that just sucks.
And it messes with their mental ability to get to that place. Because with that many pairs of eyes and people like laughing and having a good time, you start to kind of think about how self-conscious you're going to get in this moment. Yeah.
And that was something that I think both of us picked up on immediately in the beginning. We're like, okay, this cannot be how this is.
Absolutely.
And so we got to change kind of what we're doing. And if we're doing a heavy scene, it should be minimal. It should be, only the people that are required to get this shot done to make sure our actor is in the best headspace possible to be this character in this scene. So that was a big bump in our road, I think, in the very beginning. But once we figured that out and we were able to somehow connect each actor's character to some shred of their own life to draw upon. I think that was really important.
That, I think, really helped with the fact that none of these people were real actors, and it made it to where they could be good actors.
I'd like to say they were all real actors in my mind coming in, but now they're real actors in everyone's minds.
Absolutely. So I'm going to throw a couple more bumps that I know we hit along the way. Just kind of give me your first thought reaction. We were filming in the shop. There were a lot of days where a door didn't get locked and we'd be in the middle of a scene and some innocent bystander off the street would come in thinking that they were going to genuinely pawn a chainsaw or something. Go.
Oh, God. I don't know exactly how many times it happened. I would say 5 off the top of my head.
Minimum.
We had this big sign on the door that said, "We are closed," in bright yellow letters. But oftentimes we would film by the door and we'd have to take the sign down. And we would forget to lock the door. And this pawn shop has been here since 81. And it has a lot of customers who are regulars. And so there were plenty of times. One that sticks in my mind in particular is there's this, when you first see Cowboy and he is, hollering, he's wearing long johns, no pants, and he's just yelling in the front of the store there. And I'm filming and I'm just looking in the viewfinder and I hear the deet deet of the door. I'm like, what the hell is this? And I look over and it's just this dude. He's like, "Oh, you're taking pictures, are you?"
Well, and we had lights, like studio lights
Huge
set
lights,
up.
big
We
boom.
had a boom pole. I mean,
lots of people.
It was a small production, but it looked like a genuine production if you were just to walk in on it.
Any person, I don't know why no one did, but so many people were just like, "What's going on here? Yeah. What's that contraption?"
A lot of people, I remember we would say like, "Oh, we're not open. We're filming a movie," and there were a couple people that were like, "Oh, okay," and they would just start to peruse the store, and we would be like, "Sir, you need you need to leave.
Or people will be like, yeah, can I take a look around real quick? Or is there must be a big sale on guns then. It's like, no, these are props right now and set pieces. You can figure it out later.
Yeah.
This is silly.
It was, yeah, that was a big one. But
that was something that I did not expect in the slightest. And if we just would have locked the damn door. So a lot of times we did lock the door and people just like walked up and would stare through the glass. And it was just like, what is going on here?
We had somebody knock on it one time.
Yeah, we're like, what do you want? We're making a movie. Go away.
It says closed.
Yeah.
So, okay. Another hurdle I think that we would run into frequently that maybe didn't happen in the beginning of filming is all of a sudden there are scenes that are in the pawn shop. There are little extra things that would have just made the movie that much better that we thought, okay, we need to get a new shot of this or we need a shot of this. So we had to go over to the store on, what should I say, the street? We had to go to a different pawn shop. And
I know what you're saying. Okay.
Who plays the robber, was kind enough to let us kind of just run rampant in his store as well. But he's still a functioning business that is open to the public. So, just trying to make it believable that a completely different store was the original set. What do you think about that problem?
Well, I was just really happy that in that case, because we didn't lock the door, Theron was just like, no, let's just go for it. We'll just be real quick. And so I was playing a younger me in this other pawn shop that I think passed for an earlier version of the pawn shop that we did shoot in, because, I mean, the shelving is exactly the same. That was all made by my grandfather back in the day. I'm pretty sure the floors were comparable. And, I mean, it's just stuff on a shelf. Hanging guitars, glass cases.
And guns. That was a big part of it. It was just having guns on a wall.
There's not a lot of difference in most pawn shops, but those two in particular definitely had a lot of crossover, which worked in our benefit. But, yeah, I was very happy that no one walked in that particular scene, because Theron he walks in, and if you've seen the movie, you'll know, he puts on a mask, and he's got this chromed out 1911, and he's just screaming at me to open the till. And he's roughing me around and tossing me.
Die today, you little bitch?
Yeah, hold this, you little bitch. And he's just like yelling and hollering, and like it looked pretty good. I mean, it looked like he was robbing the joint. We used the security camera footage from that shop, which I wanted to do more of in the first pawn shop that we worked at, but the security system didn't work there. It was just all for show.
Good thing it's closed now.
Yeah, good thing we didn't really get robbed. That would be a bummer. But yeah, that was a pretty funny scene. Theron, we'll probably have him on this podcast and we'll talk to him a little bit, but I was really happy after the premiere. I ran by Debo's on 7th there, and I was talking to Theron, and he's like, man, it was really cool. I'd never done anything like that. It was really cool to like play a character. And he's just like, it was exciting because all of a sudden he's like, I kind of want to play a bad guy, like a really bad guy. And like really see if I can get to that part in my soul to play this like evil character. And I was like, dude, you already played a robber. He's like, yeah, but I want to be like a bad guy. So that's really intriguing to me that, because of Hocked, maybe, now this will lead to some other thing for someone that probably wouldn't have done it otherwise.
Yeah, get out of your comfort zone, people. It's great.
Be a bad guy.
All right, so then last hurdle that comes to mind to bring up to you.
Mm-hmm.
There were a couple of things that we had to film with people that were not available the moment that we had to film them.
Yeah.
So we mentioned before, I play a body double for the character Jay in this, who is also played by Jalen Sylvie, because she's the Jalen Sylvie. She's very busy. She's in high demand. So there were plenty of times where she couldn't make it. So,
or had strep throat.
Or, was horribly ill. Her main scene, she's horribly ill, but she still killed it.
Yeah.
And then another one being Andrew Enos, who plays Beer Can Rob. There were a couple times where we needed just their body, just a silhouette.
Or their truck.
Or their truck, in Andrew's case, to be in the scene. And so I played a body double for Jay. Steve plays a body double for Beer Can Rob at one point in time. Just kind of navigating the the schedules and making do with what we had, how did that kind of hit you as the director?
Oh, I thought it was fun. It just makes you more, you just have to think more creatively. If you look at the final scene, the cleanup scene, Jay walks in. There's her. She's got two thugs there. There's Connor's there, Curtis is there, Booger's there, and Steve's there, and there's 2 dead people on the floor and 1 guy in the back. That's 10 people in the pawn shop. You know how hard it is to get 10 fucking people who have jobs in one place at one time? Like, it's impossible. You just cannot do that. So
not everybody lived here.
No, and everybody has jobs, and no one really knew. You tell someone, you're like, hey man, I'm making a movie. They're like, oh, okay. Like, that's it. That's all you get. And then when they watch the movie, they're like, oh, you made a movie.
Like a real movie.
You made like a real movie. You know how many times I've heard that term? A real movie.
I've gotten that quite a bit as well.
Like, fuck you, Pinocchio. I was making a real movie from the beginning, okay? Whatever. Anyway, so there's 10 people in the story of Hocked in that moment. There's no way we could get all 10 of those people at one time. So, we would have Ty for 2 hours before he had to go to work. So we would film as much with Ty as possible. And then, Jalen could kind of overlap. Okay, so in that overlap, we'd shoot him and Jay in the same scene. Maybe Dave's there. Oh, okay, let's get a shot with Dave in the scene. And I'm always there. So it's like, okay, now we got 4 people. I'm like, oh, fuck yeah.
There were a lot of
4
times
people in this shot. That's awesome.
Where we would have one person for like an hour, and then 30 minutes of that would overlap with another person that needed to be in that scene. Mm-hmm. So there were a lot of times where like, okay, what can we skip for now and do later that we don't need all 4 or 5 of these people in this one shot?
Yeah.
So it was a lot of like really detailed scheduling.
Mm-hmm. Which surprisingly detailed.
Horrible.
And, you can probably tell in some scenes. I think Ty in particular had like a pretty cool sunglasses tan that popped up in between
he had gone
scenes.
Fishing.
Yeah. And let's see what else we got. The blood on my face dries, and then mysteriously I just break into a hot sweat again. That's another one that's kind of funny.
I hate the makeup in this movie.
No, I really like the makeup in this movie. I think it's cool. Jay, in between shots, you're just like, well, you have strep. Oh, no, you don't. Oh, you have strep. No, I'm just kidding. I think Jay having strep added to her role quite a bit.
I was just going to say that I think it actually brought a lot to her character.
Yeah, it was like the Michael Jordan flu game. It was sweet.
Yeah. Oh, she did great. I think she would have done just as good healthy.
Yes.
But I think having strep throat and her being in so much pain to speak just made her that much more terrifying.
I know. I called her and she's like, what? What do you want? I was like, Jalen, I am so sorry, but we have one last damn day to film this scene. She's like, okay, I hate you. But anyway, she did good. And many a time we stuffed. Everyone would leave their clothes, their characters' clothes, in the back room. We had a little area for everyone's clothes. And there were plenty of times where we would just pack their clothing full of nothing, like paper and other clothes. And just, if they were dead on the floor, most likely if you saw them and they were dead, those are just stuffed clothes, like a scarecrow laying on the floor.
Yeah, luckily that was another benefit of being in the pawn shop is we always had tons of random packing paper and materials from doing eBay sales and having to ship things out. And so Steve and I we would get there an hour before everybody else, and we would just start stuffing and making these fake dead bodies
They
just
were
full of paper.
Yeah. Rich never laid on the floor of the pawn shop one time. That was just always his scarecrow. Poor Kevin. Kevin did lay on the pawn shop floor quite a bit.
Yeah, Kevin's a trooper.
Yeah, face down.
Oof, yeah.
That was gross.
Yeah.
Hope he's doing okay.
I hope he didn't get like TB.
Yeah.
Sorry, Kevin.
Icky. So yeah, there was a lot of that, but I don't think you could notice unless I just told you, hopefully, that none of those scenes, none of those people were together. There's a scene, if you look at, this is gonna be mean, and I love you, Duncan, but you have a different build than Dave Curry, and
very different.
So you see the scene where Jay snaps, and that means for Duncan, Thug 2 to walk over, grab Ty, and drag him out of the pawn shop. We didn't have that shot when Duncan was there. He moved. He went down to Denver or something.
Vegas, I thought.
Vegas, I don't know. Yeah, maybe. I don't know. Nice guy. Love him. But we didn't have him for that scene. We needed something to break up that scene. So I was like, okay. Luckily, I took his shirt. I was like, Duncan, I got to have your shirt.
Thanks for the shirt, Duncan.
Sorry, man. I could have even sent it to you. I feel stupid now.
No, it's part of the Hocked Hall of Fame now. You don't get it back.
Yeah. But if you look, it's Dave in that shot. You don't ever see the guy's face. And it's Dave's arm and hand that comes over and pulls him. And it's stuff like that where hopefully you don't notice. Or the scene where I play the back of Beer Can Rob. And I'm literally wearing an afro tucked into my shirt.
On your face.
On my face, upside down, because that's the closest thing we had.
Andrew has this big, glorious beard.
Jesus beard.
Steven cannot grow a beard like that.
I cannot.
Maybe on just his neck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I could rival that in neck. But there was a lot of scenes like that. You pretty much played Jay almost. I mean, you might have as much screen time as Jalen does. I don't know. Because you play her in the flashback, you play her in the phone call.
Yeah, the body doubles. Until her big reveal, I'm pretty much her.
Yeah. So but that's just how it is making an indie film. You don't have everybody there. You're not paying anybody. At least we didn't. And so you're kind of at the mercy of everybody's schedules and how they're feeling that day. Like, I did. But if someone calls you and like, hey, man, I got strep throat, you can't be like, well, fuck you. Come in. Jalen was
Steve was
nice
able
enough
to do that because it's his sister.
Yeah. I can, or like, it's anybody. So we were at the mercy of a lot of different things. We had to be very creative. We didn't have a lot of money. We didn't have any money in the beginning of this. And luckily, we made a lot of stuff work just based off of
ingenuity.
Yeah, just kind of thinking out of the box and letting people run with their characters and not trying to do too much where we weren't punching outside of our weight class is kind of how I like to say. Like, there's some effects, some practical effects mixed in with some CG effects. And we didn't want this to be Die Hard. No. You know, there's no explosions. One dude gets capped in the face. Another guy gets capped pretty hard in the side and like in the chest and yada, yada, yada. A lot of people die. But we made sure, and it's kind of, I've heard it being described like Hitchcockian, where you're just like, the less you show, sometimes the more impact there is.
Less is more.
Yeah. And I don't know, I think we might have still done that, even if we had a little bit more money. But I don't know. So that was another thing where, we're not trying to do too much where, like, this is just a pawn shop. This looks like a pawn shop because it's real. Or these are real detectives and they're talking just how they would because they're real. And, we didn't make up a fake, like, Oval Office. You know how they do that in movies and you're like, Jesus Christ. Wow, That's not the Oval Office. That looks like dog shit.
Right.
So there's none of that. We don't try to do anything that we cannot do. And I think that helped out in our benefit.
Okay. So touching on the budget a little bit.
Yes.
Simply asked, what was the budget for Hocked?
I don't know. I don't really know what the cutoff is for an official budget that you would list wherever you wanted to list it. On IMDb, it says we have a $10,000 budget, and that is all of our expenses from pre-production to our premiere, essentially, all wrapped into one, not including man hours or really gas. So that's kind of I don't know. That's our area that we're working in.
Yeah, $10,000 or less. I think $10,000 is on the generous side. Like we said, nobody was paid to do this. And we already had all the equipment. We didn't have to pay for a venue to shoot in, which is lucky. I would say, like,
our fees were very minimal. That was a big one, too. I mean, you could spend, an ass ton in just filming permits and fees. You can get tied up in that crap, too.
Absolutely.
Just,
And
it looks like a nightmare.
We did a really good job at keeping all of that really low. And I think a big part of that was we used our own skill sets and our ability to learn to expand on that. All of the graphic design we did. All of the posters we had printed, but the design was done by us. We didn't pay anybody to do the design.
Shout out FedEx.
Yeah, FedEx is great.
They do really well.
Really quick printing.
And she recognized me earlier.
Yeah, they know that we made a movie because we had so much printed at FedEx.
No, she heard it on the radio.
Oh, that too. Mm-hmm. It's like 69 cents per copy to print at FedEx. It was awesome. So thank you, FedEx and Bozeman. And just, I think we might have paid Andrew for gas in his truck a couple times. Maybe. On days that we just took it.
Yeah. There's that. We paid for the Bobcat. Had to have the Bobcat. Yeah. But I actually think I did. I noticed it the other day. I don't think Single Six paid for the Bobcat. I think I paid for the fucking Bobcat.
Yeah. Steve Drake paid for the Bobcat.
I just forgot that I paid for it.
Single Six Media did not.
So you're welcome, Hocked. I now have a cross-eyed Bobcat in my fucking garage forever.
Right. Well, so we got a Bobcat. A horribly done Bobcat, but it played to the comedy of it, which was perfect.
You never know how old it is. That could be from like the 1400s. And it's like the best Bobcat you ever seen in the 1400s.
Maybe.
But that's what I'm saying.
We wanted it to be a Bobcat like on a rock so we could mount it to the wall.
Oh, yeah,
so what did we do? Instead of paying a taxidermist, like a real professional, to do it.
Or putting a rock on the wall.
Or putting a real rock on the wall. We bought some chicken wire, some spray foam insulation, and textured spray paint and made our own rock.
It looked like if the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man from Ghostbusters took a dump.
Yeah.
That's what it looked like.
Oh, yeah.
If you look too close.
Don't look too close. And then for a lot of our practical effects, any of the glass breaking and things like that, Steve and I were crouched down in his garage and he had a slingshot that he would just slingshot giant like nuts and bolts into the glass.
Just nuts. I only sling nuts.
Okay, just nuts. So, I mean, you can do it. We made do with what we had. We kept our budget low because we didn't really have a choice, but I think it worked out in our benefit for quite a bit of it.
It just goes back to what I'm saying. Yeah, you don't have to. Less is more.
I agree. So this whole process, everything we've done, start to finish, you said at the top of this, you learned a lot.
Yep.
If there was anything that you could change in the filming process, what would it have been?
Well, just the filming?
Yeah, let's do it step by step here.
Mm-hmm. I would have somebody on the boom pole at all times. A lot of times it was just a
stool.
A stool where the boom pole was propped up against. The audio was a little silly at times. I don't know. At the end of it, I was pretty happy with the performances. In my ability of directing the performances, I'll always be able to learn more. But I'm the most proud of the acting performances in the movie, I think. Second to, we made a fucking movie, so leave me alone. But as far as filming goes, I don't want to film it. I want someone who has some real cinematic eyeballs on them, who can really bring some gusto to a storyboard. I really enjoy storyboarding, and I think I can, every once in a while I can come up with a cool shot. But it would be neat to collaborate with somebody who's got some special eyes on them. So I do that, and I wouldn't be in the fucking movie. Not getting my head put in the toilet again. But there has to be someone going in the toilet. So
this is true.
That's my calling card.
All right, so if you had to pick two major lessons from making this film and be able to apply them in the next one, what two lessons are you taking with you?
Oh, I suppose you should back up your hard drives and don't fuck with the Bobcat.
And who wins, Booger or the Bobcat?
Bobcat, all day. Your cat shit in the woods, buddy. I stand by that. That's for real. We talked to a lot of people in the filming of this process, and I'm not going to say I wanted to write in a personal argument that I had with my brother into a movie just to prove him wrong, but I did, and it happened. And I don't care what Patrick said the other day. You're wrong, man. The animal trainer that we got to provide us a real bobcat who had 25 years plus in the animal world. I don't even know what you call him.
Wildlife biology.
Well, he wasn't a biologist. He's just a
Trainer?
wrangler. I think
Trainer?
you call him a wrangler. I don't know. Apparently, we had no idea. This is kind of actually neat. We live in Bozeman, Montana, and there's not a lot really going on here. It's like the best place to retire or raise a kid in the country.
Don't come here.
Or do. Whatever. I don't care. It's too late.
Joe Rogan,
anyway.
stop talking about Bozeman.
But just down the road, and no one knows this, but there is a like world-renowned animal training, not really facility, but there's people, and we had no idea, but there's people with tigers and wolves and bears and panthers and
Badgers.
lynx and badgers and
Bobcats,
obviously, and probably more animals that I can't even think. Cougars.
panther. I think we saw a panther, right?
Yeah, well, we saw a black panther and we saw a mountain lion. Crazy stuff. And they're like just off one of the main roads to go to the next town over.
Mm-hmm.
And you would never know. I've driven by there. I've driven
100
down that
times.
road so many times, and I had no idea I was within a mile of a tiger. Siberian fucking tiger. That's cool. But long story short, yeah, the guy has a lot of experience with wild animals in training them, wrangling them, providing them for film. And he specifically told Booger to his face that he would not take a bobcat. So that's that.
Heard it from the experts, and I'm in agreement. I don't think that he could take a bobcat.
No, you couldn't.
No way.
There was once a trapper. I'm going to look into this for the next podcast. But there was a trapper, and they called him Scarface before Al Pacino made it cool. Well, I guess before Capone made it cool. Pacino made it cool. But he was called Scarface because he got fucked up by a bobcat. And I don't think he killed it. So, whatever.
Dude, if
I got
Pacino
beef.
can't do it, Josh can't do it.
If Pacino can't do it, yeah.
Love
True.
Josh, but...
Yep.
Well, that's it for this week. Let's talk Hocked next week on Hocked Unloaded. On next week's episode of the podcast, we take a deep dive into the special effects of the movie, as well as some of the red tape that we had to go through to get here. Keep up to date on all the Hocked things that we're doing and where we're doing them by following us on all the major socials @HockedTheMovie.